Okay. All right. Anybody remember what we talked about last week? Anybody at all? How about you on the back row back there? You know, I say that, but there's going to come a time when people will appreciate the knowledge of the word that we have around here. So anyway, all right. And I don't say that to brag about me. I'm talking about all the people around here that have just really good knowledge about the word. So we left off last week. We were talking about Jesus. Before Paul talked about Christ and you, the hope of glory, he talked about Jesus, because that's where everything comes from. So let's just kind of back up just a little bit and just kind of read through these scriptures so we can pick up where we left off. And we'll just start reading in verse 20 in the first chapter. And having made peace through the blood of his cross, by him to reconcile all things unto himself. By him, whether they be things in earth or in heaven. You know, it's an interesting thing that he uses the kind of language that he might reconcile all things to himself. So many times we have relationships, whatever they might be, and we're totally unwilling to reconcile those relationships. And yet Jesus shed his own blood, went to the cross to reconcile every single relationship to himself. And you that were alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works. Anytime you get alienated from God, you're going to have wicked works. When you get yourself cut off from him, wicked works are coming. And the thing is, you'll never know it's happening. I mean, you'll be just sitting around in your own thoughts, thinking, you know I was born a male, but I kind of feel like a female today. It happens. Just look at the news. You think it can't happen? It just ain't happened to you. We were alienated. If it can happen to one, it can happen to everyone. That's the thing about spiritual death. Everything. If Hitler was capable of it, every single one of us in spiritual death are capable of it. And we like to use Hitler because he's the epitome of evil, but or we like to think he is, but he's really not. He's just one side of it. There's another side of it that's just as alluring during these days, during these times. For instance, like, should I go there? Should I not go there? Nah, we'll just keep reading. I'll say the same thing again sometime. Y'all get it. All right. In the body, verse 22, in the body of his flesh through death, to present you holy and unblameable. See, he presented himself, went through what you didn't have to, so that he could present you like he is. So you wouldn't have to go through what he went through. Verse 23, if you continue in the faith, grounded and settled, you got to be grounded and settled. There's a lot of people building ministries and not building the kingdom. They're not grounded. They're not settled. They're running around here full of insecurity and all types of things. And because they have the ability to speak well, say things in the way that we like to hear them said, and, writing books that really appeal to our selfishness, our self-nature, like Your Best Life Now. Who's the beneficiary of your best life? I mean, can you imagine Jesus living his best life now when he was in the New Testament? He showed up on the scene, and instead of building the church, building the kingdom, he decided, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to call it Your Best Life Now. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to make a fortune. This is going to be great. It's going to be great, guys. Anyway, I'm not going to say any more about that because I'm going to get at least somewhere. If you can continue in the faith, grounded, settled, and be not moved away from the hope of the gospel, which we have heard, which has been preached to every creature under heaven, whereof I, Paul, am made a minister. Paul was made a minister. We said last week that Jesus, when he walked up to the disciples, he said, follow me and I will make you. I will make you. What's one of the major things that we hear in society? I mean, today especially, but even when I was young, people would go to California to find themselves. Well, if they were in Georgia and they were going to California, I can tell you they're not going to find them in California until they get there. All you got to do is look in the mirror. Find yourself. I mean, really. Who comes up with that? It's stupid. Sorry for all you hippies that are out there that are listening to this and watching this, but all these people that are running around here don't know if they're a man or a woman. It started with you because you couldn't find yourself. I'm sorry that you couldn't find yourself. But that's not the world's problem. You are your problem. And don't put your stuff on me because you can't find yourself. And because you don't know that if you're a man or a woman doesn't mean that I don't know if I'm a man or a woman. I'm a man. I know I'm a man. I have facial hair. I have to trim it all the time. It gets on my nerves. It can be at times infuriating. So in verse 24, who now rejoice in my sufferings for you and fill up that which is behind of the afflictions of Christ in my flesh. Now, first of all, he says, Paul is able to rejoice in his sufferings, not for himself, but for somebody else. He is able to rejoice in his sufferings because he knows that somebody else is getting the benefit of it. How are you gonna just go through life and just go through suffering after suffering after suffering and nobody's getting any benefit? Because if you're suffering, you're not getting the benefit. I mean, Keith and Anita, they've gone through suffering after suffering after suffering just so Denver wouldn't have to. Right? What makes it joyful for them to go through the suffering that they go through? It makes it worth it because somebody else is getting the benefit of it. And then, of course, after a particular period of time, and they've raised him right, then it's going to turn around and Denver's suffering is going to be for the benefit. That's what we're praying for anyway. But who goes through suffering for the benefit of suffering? You don't go through suffering just so it can benefit. You've got a goal in sight. If you're going through some kind of suffering, it's because you've got a goal in sight. It doesn't matter if it's military, business world, whatever it is. You go through suffering because there's something in sight and you're looking to get, success is never this way. I got this from John Maxwell. Just this week, I was just flipping through and saw it. He said, success is never this way. Success is always this way. You never get to coast to success. But you listen to people in the church and people in the world, they want to coast downhill to success. It's not going to happen. Downhill is not the way to success. You've got to climb, you've got to claw, you've got to struggle. You have to, when you're climbing, you know, when Jesus was doing the Beatitudes, when he was talking about the Beatitudes, he climbed, it says he went up the mountain. And one translation says when he got up there, he talked to his climbing companions. I don't know if any of you have ever climbed anything, but when you climb something, first of all, you've got whatever it is you're climbing to deal with, but then you've got the weight of yourself that you've got to deal with. And if you've got too much baggage and you've got too much weight, when you start to climb, you either decide, I'm going to stay right here, I'm going to live in this place because I don't want to give up what I got, or I'm going to shake that off and I'm going to keep climbing. I'm going to shed that off. You know, it could be selfishness, it could be anger, it could be anxiety, it could be anything. But if you're going to climb, if you're going to get to the top, it's not this way, it's this way. Because I promise you, I've climbed enough trees and I fell out of enough trees. I remember we were living over there at where a guy in Charity lived now, and there was this pear tree. I don't know if it's still there. Oh, raggedy pear tree. That thing seemed like it was 20 feet tall. It probably wasn't, but I was a little kid. I climbed up there, and I was climbing, and we were playing tag, and I was trying to get away from Mickey. Mickey. There's some stories I could tell you about Mickey, but he's not here to defend himself, so I won't talk about it. But he was coming after me. And so I was climbing that tree, and I was bent and determined, he's not getting me. And I climbed up there, and there was this rotten branch, and I grabbed a hold of that rotten branch, and when I grabbed it, it didn't hold my weight, and I fell. Y'all ever seen the movie Rambo, where he jumps off the cliff into the trees? He didn't do that. I don't know if they say it's possible. I don't think it's possible, because all I did was fall like a few feet. I had this huge wound on the side of my side where I had fell. It was bad, Carl. It was tough. It hurt really bad. But he didn't tag me. So you don't suffer for yourself. You just don't go out here and say, I'm going to suffer. You suffer for other people. That's why you suffer. I mean, you know, Timothy and Robin, they've gone through things in their life nobody knows. Nobody knows everything you've gone through. Why did you do it? Because you got a bigger goal in mind. You don't suffer for the sake of suffering. If you're doing that, you need to go see a psychiatrist. So he says, I, who now rejoice in my sufferings for you, and the reason he could rejoice in his sufferings is because he knew it was going to benefit them and fill up that which is behind of the afflictions of Christ. That which is behind of the afflictions of Christ. Christ had to go through some sufferings. He had to go through some stuff. Wasn't easy. I mean, you think about what he had to go through. He could have had the biggest church. He could have wrote the most books. He could have, had a TV ministry, all that stuff. He didn't do it. He said, I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I'd like to ask some of these ministers that write some of these books, Your Best Life Now, I'd like to ask them, how is that standing up against the gates of hell? When you get to the gates of hell, how is that going to thwart the gates of hell? And when I say the gates of hell, you understand that the gates were a authoritative place where they met in the gates, and they would dispute. The Democrats and the Republicans, they would come together in the gates, and they would talk about how we're going to prosecute Donald Trump, and the other side would say, well, we're going to prosecute Hunter Biden. We don't have the gates of a city anymore. We have the gates that's in Washington. But that's what they're doing, and it's a mess. Like I said last week, I'd rather go to the zoo and watch the animals or the aquarium. I like the aquarium, especially the one was it Chattanooga we went to? I like that one. He says, wherefore I've made a minister. Verse 25. Whereof I am made a minister according to the dispensation of God. What is the dispensation of God? Because Paul was made a minister according to the dispensation of God. I was talking to Logan about this earlier. That word dispensation means to distribute. It's an administrative word. In other words, when Paul was talking about in Ephesians chapter 4, when he said Jesus ascended on high, he gave gifts unto men. He ascended on high and he distributed to every single person on this planet an assignment and a gift and an operation. And just because people don't ever discover it, that's not God's fault. As a matter of fact, hold your place right there for just a second. We're talking about the dispensation. It's like, okay, a cup holder. I take a cup out, I give it to Steph. It's a dispenser, a cup dispenser. I take a cup out, I give it to Robin. I take a cup out, I give it to Vernon. Take a cup out, I give it to Keith. I take a cup out, I give it to Carl. I take a cup out, I will even give it to Danita. I'm going to get slapped for that one, ain't it, Keith? You can slap him. You can slap him, Danita. But that's what that word means. It means when he didn't go before the Father, and the Father asked him, well, what did you do? What did you do about Danita? Jesus never once said, oh, man, I forgot about Danita. He never does that. When he ascended on high, he gave gifts. He is the best administrator you will ever see or find, ever. So he administrated those gifts. He dispensed those gifts to each and every single one of us. It's up to us to find what it is. But that's what he did. He did his part. Hold your place right there. Let's go over to, because I'll back this up with 1 Corinthians. The 12th chapter? I'm not going to keep you long. I'm going to try not to keep you long. 12th chapter, first verse. And I've taught this before. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. The word gifts is in italics, which means it was added by the translators because the translators were trying to help you understand what they were saying. And they put it in italics. They weren't trying to deceive you. They were putting it in italics because they thought it might help you better understand what Paul was talking about, but it didn't work here. Because in the 2nd chapter, he said, now concerning spiritual brethren, I would not have you ignorant. No, he said, I couldn't speak unto you as unto spiritual things, but as unto carnal. So he was talking about spiritual things. But in this chapter, chapter 12, he says, now concerning spiritual brethren, I would not have you ignorant. For you know you were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols. How many dumb idols do we have in America today? And we think that America is cutting edge, and we're not. And nobody wants to say it, and nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody wants to stick their head in the sand. We're dealing with issues that we have created in America for ourselves. We brought it on ourselves with our philosophy, vain deceit, all that stuff. We just want to sympathize with the people. You know, it's like, what is the most persecuted person in America today as a group, as a whole group? Can anybody tell me what the most persecuted group of people is in America today? The what? Well, she said it. I didn't say it. So if you get mad at me, my wife said that. It's the white male. White heterosexual male. White heterosexual male. You know why? Because the devil don't like men. He hates men. As a matter of fact, when you go to look at the, oh Lord, do I want to say that? I don't mean this like I'm against a particular organization or anything like that. Because I think the cause is just and righteous and good. But when you say Black Lives Matter, I would get it down a little bit closer to what it really should say. Black men matter. Because the devil started taking out black men before he ever started taking out white men. As a matter of fact, there's a verse in the Old Testament that talks about how God, when God pronounces judgment on a people, he takes away the mighty man. Not the mighty woman, the man. And then you see these guys coming along that are men from birth that are just tearing up women's sports. Well, why is that? I mean, some of these people are getting the hormone therapy almost from birth. But what they don't tell you is the main difference between men and women is when a man is in a womb and a woman is in a womb, a man has this thing, it's like testosterone washes over his brain. And what it does, it actually severs a lot of the connective nerves from one side of the brain to the other. Women don't have that. They're still connected to both sides. That's why you guys are weird. And that's why we guys are weird to each other. That's what happens. And that happens before you ever come out of the womb. I've never heard, I'm not even hearing anybody talk about the difference between men and women in the womb, because they don't even acknowledge that life begins in the womb. So how did I get off on that? That was Stephanie's fault. But there is a definite attack on men, male. America has become a laughing stock to the rest of the world. We traded the merchant of death for a WNBA player. You know why? Because we worship talent and entertainment. And we have let people tell us what we should value. And we left a Marine, a white heterosexual male, in prison in Russia. And we brought home a lesbian female instead of going at it from a position of strength. And we traded the merchant of death. Now, you trying to tell me that we don't have enough money to buy that woman's freedom? You trying to tell me the United States of America does not have the ability to get that woman home without having to trade, and to get that man home as well? But no, we traded the merchant of death. You know what that means? He's an arms dealer. That means that there's going to be American lives lost, not just here, but in other places. All over the place. Because he knows how to get weapons. He knows how to get those weapons into other people's hands. And we're not going to see it right away. It's going to happen when he gets back in contact with his buddies. And we've got open borders. And see, everybody's, I don't care about open borders or anything like that. No, what you have done is you have opened up America to terrorist attack. The number one killer between 18 to 45 in America today is fentanyl coming across the border. Fentanyl. It used to be at one point it was drunk drivers. So all I got to say is, drunk drivers, you're going to have to step up your game. That's sarcasm. But that's the America that we live in today. So now, concerning spiritual brethren, see, all this is natural stuff, but it's spiritual stuff. Now, concerning spiritual brethren, I wouldn't have you ignorant. You know, you were dumb. You were Gentiles led unto dumb idols, even as you were led. Wherefore I give you to understand that nobody speaking by the Spirit of God calls Jesus a curse. What was happening here is people were speaking in tongues, and when they were speaking in tongues, we don't know what we're saying. How do we know we're not cursing God? So Paul said, look, no man speaking in tongues is cursing God. You ain't got to worry about it. That's not where I was going. And that no man can say that Jesus is Lord but by the Holy Ghost. There's some things we could unpack there, but I'm just going to keep going. Verse 4, 5, and 6 is what I'm going to get to. Now, there are diversities of gifts. That means that there are gifts that when Jesus ascended on high, notice that gifts is not in italics. So those gifts are given by God. They are not in italics. He was talking specifically about gifts. He said there are diversities of gifts. There are all different types of gifts given in the body of Christ. They were all, there's nobody that didn't get a gift. You get born again, you get a gift. You get born again, you get a gift. Jesus gave gifts before Oprah Winfrey ever said, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car. Anyway, I'm being a little sarcastic tonight, but it'll be all right. I'll pay for it tomorrow. I'll be crawling into fetal position thinking you shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have said that. The devil's trying to take the gift of manhood out of America. It's a gift. Being a man is a gift. Being a woman is a gift. But he's not trying to take the woman away. He's trying to take the man away. As a matter of fact, you do it long enough, I don't know if I'm going to get to the message. You do that to a man long enough, it doesn't matter about the color of his skin. It doesn't matter about any of that. You do that to a man long enough, you're going to pay for it. Because there's a fight in a man that's going to eventually show up, and you ain't going to like it when it does. You ever notice how you never, ever have in crime shows? This woman raped and murdered this man and strangled her. You know why you never hear about that? Because men are stronger, they're more aggressive, they're meaner, and they're tougher. I'm sorry for all you feminist people out there. It's just a fact. And a man has his battles to fight, just like women have their battle to fight. But a man is a man. And you try to hold down a man long enough, and guess what you're going to have? You're going to have a bunch of men that are out here that have no purpose or destiny and have been told that they're worthless, they have no place in society. Guess what they're going to start doing? They're going to start burning down cities, because you cannot keep men down. It won't happen. It's eventually going to happen. Well, we've already seen a little bit of it. And everybody wants to put it on this race or this organization or this organization. No, you started keeping men down a long time ago, America. You started that. So now you're going to have to live with the consequences. Go back in history. Anytime a society was oppressed, who was it that rose up and won that society back and took it back? It was mighty men that did that. And there is a war on men and masculinity. We don't mind you being a man. Just don't act like one. In fact, get that hair off your face. It makes you look more feminine when you don't have hair on your face like that. It's to the point now that in society, men want to be women. Anyway, just say it. You cannot disrupt the operation of God, it's going to come to pass and it's going to happen. And you can try to suppress it, but it's going to happen. We're not getting there. So, I tell you what it's like. It's like when somebody comes to you and prays and asks for you to pray for their teenager that they won't have sex. In this society today, are you serious? Are you serious? And you want me to pray that they won't have sex? First of all, I have to pray against something that God put in place for a man to leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. I can't pray against God's order. So we're praying for the wrong thing. You have to pray for God to send the right person at the right time for the right thing, and that's how it happens. And then they can leave and cleave. Because the order of God is for a man to leave father and mother and cleave to a wife. Now, how am I going to pray against puberty? Anybody want to take a gander at that one? So there are gifts, there are callings, and we'll get into that next week because we've already taken up our time. And I guess tonight, I'm going to leave you with, there is a war. The stuff that you see in America today, you think it's all about this organization and this organization and this organization and this organization and this Democrat, this political party and this political. No. The devil is trying to take the mighty men out of America. Because when you take the men out, you take the fight out. And we try to glorify, oh, Mama Hen. I'm going to tell you something. There's nothing more dangerous than a man. When you attack his woman, you attack his family, there's nothing more dangerous when he's a man. When he's a man. When he's got his masculinity. The same thing holds for a community, for a state, and for a nation. And if you can take the masculinity out of a nation, then you'll trade a merchant of death for a basketball player. That's what will happen. So it's not about the basketball player. It's not even about the merchant of death. It's about how we have confused and ruined a society by taking the men out. Amen? Did y'all get anything out of this? Those of you online, I do apologize. I was going to talk about a lot of other things, but don't take men out of your society. Don't take men out of your home. They're a gift from God. Their masculinity. Now, I know that there are men that abuse their strength. That's wrong. You slapping around your wife, somebody needs to come in and slap you around. That's wrong. You shouldn't do that. God gave you that strength. He gave you that tenacity. He gave you that testosterone to protect, defend. That's what a man does. That's what a man thinks about. That's what he is. And for a society to take that out, you've just taken out the strength of your society because you think women are as strong as men. See, they confuse, they throw those words around like equality. It's got nothing to do with equality. Men and women are equal. They're different. That's it. They're different. Women are stronger in some areas. Men are stronger than in other areas. You put the two together, and they can make a family. That's why the devil wants to take men out. We had a strange phenomenon happen in our daycare. There were no men. The grandparents were raising the kids. I don't know if it's so much that way now, but like 10, 15 years ago, the grandparents were raising the kids. Because the men had been taught, both black and white, that there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you being aggressive. There's not anything wrong with you. You just need to get it in order. Don't let that aggressiveness overcome you. You overcome the aggressiveness. And you use it in its in its proper place and its proper context, and it works. Somebody breaks into your house, and it's a male. There's no way my wife's going to be able to fight them off. But I will. Door flew open the other night, a couple of months ago. I heard her scream, and it was just like terror. It wasn't fear, it was terror. I went straight at it. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew I'd never heard her make that sound before. I had to get past her to get to the gun. And if I'd had to knock somebody down to get to the gun to shoot them, I'd have done it. It just so happened that I think it was the wind. The door didn't close good, and I think the wind knocked it open. But man, I was ready. I was ready. She said my response time was really quick. I ran down the hall. I think I hit because the way the house is, you got to go through different. And so I was like a ping pong ball. And I was using that momentum. Men are men, and they're men for a reason. Now, men, that doesn't give you the right to try to intimidate, be belligerent, or try to control your wife. You were there to protect, defend. That's what a man does. You don't try to control. So, anyway. All right, I didn't know I was going that direction, but it was still good anyway. It's good information. And it's true. And it's right. And it probably made a lot of people mad. Bunch of feminists. Good for nothing. Lying, deceiving, Jezebels, trying to tell people that they're femininity is whatever. No. No. Pastor Andy loves the people. And I've run up on this. I've run up on this because I can teach it from the Word of God where it says it. And women, I know of women that will not submit to a man because of a feminist movement that tries to make men act like women. and women act like men. So, anyway, all right. Anybody need prayer before we go? Anybody mad? Those of you online, if you're mad, I'm not sorry. Just, I'm right and you're wrong. Just saying. I was not going to say this tonight. I had no idea about saying this. I wanted to talk about the gifts and Christ in you, the hope and glory, but this is what came out. So evidently it's needed. So you decide. You make the choice. Men are men, women are women. Or they used to be anyway. But men don't get to be men anymore. Because a woman told them that you're a pig. Like women hold the moral high ground. Let me tell you something, women. You do not hold the moral high ground. There's just as much of us that are moral and good people as there are women that are moral and good people. And there's just as much of men that are immoral, bad people as there are women that are immoral, bad people. Spiritual death came with spiritual death. So, I wish I'd have said something a lot different tonight. But I didn't. So, I love y'all. Y'all still love me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, we got to take up the offering. All right, you men. Come on, get on up here. It is what it is. You know, Paul said the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. The taking away of men in this country. I'm not saying men are perfect or men are the end-all, be-all. I'm just saying that there's something in a man that a woman needs. There's something in a woman that a man needs. God designed it that way, and that's the way it is. I didn't come up with the rules. I just have to tell you what the rules are. And that's it. I mean, if Keith pops off at Danita, she's got the right to hit him with a frying pan right square between his eyes. All right. I'm done, Tim. We done?